Gentlemen, the time has come once again to discuss things.
Anyway, hi everyone, welcome to another episode of Geeky Gentlemen. I am Sid Part 2, joining me today is...
And Steve.
And Steve. Everybody's favorite Steve. And then, phoning it in for fun over here. So, we have a topic discussion, and this was Fraud for Fun's pick. So what are we talking about today?
As Fraud for Fun, I don't really remember. It actually wasn't me who was on it last time. It was a life model decoy, so probably some shit we'll talk about for a while and then I'll go jerk off. I don't fucking know. We're going to be talking about rebranding titles. I don't know specifically what wording Mr. Always Giving It His All Part 2 over here will deliver, but it's more so the idea of, if you've been keeping up with Marvel Comics, they've been making a habit of revisiting old 90s stories like the Clone Saga or Heroes Reborn and using the same title for something different. And this isn't obviously exclusive to that, but it's a recent example that made me think of the practice of this and the merits of it, why we do it, why people tend to lean towards it, and if there are any negatives to that, and just kind of discuss it as a whole, because it is kind of an interesting topic that it does it's not necessarily the content either, but sometimes it is. So again, there's a lot of different avenues you can take this, so I thought it would be a kind of a chill little thought to go and break bread with these fine gentlemen who would never phone it in.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I don't know. It's one of those things. DC and Marvel and comics have been doing this for years. It seems to be not exclusive to comics, but they definitely use it the most. Because I can't really think of many films that do this, where they use the same title and it's not just a remake. There's things that are clearly inspired by other things, and they give it maybe a little nod. The Kevin Bacon film Death Sentence is very clearly inspired by Death Wish with Charles Bronson, but they're very different films.
Would you guys say, because you're right, movies don't do that explicitly the way Marvel does, but would you guys say this trend in the last 5 to 10 years of just titling sequels the same thing as the first movie kind of fits this category? The sequel to Halloween is Halloween, the sequel remake to prequel to The Thing is The Thing, like that?
Maybe.
That's weird to me, and I don't understand it.
I would say it is. I would say that does count, because that's the practice of, again, you're using something familiar to... especially in those examples when they're so far-reaching, everyone knows what Halloween the movie is, and again in a way that's distinct from the holiday, and also intertwined with it. But by naming your movie that again, when it has that reputation, you are kind of making a statement. You are making a... With movies specifically, especially ones where they are classic reboots or whatever, it is more like a nut up or shut up kind of thing. It's okay, we're not fucking around because we're using the name, and that doesn't often actually translate, because sometimes they are exactly fucking around. But in a marketing sense, it's very much so to we're going back to the source, the original, the purest version. There is no extra things.
Yeah, because you know, you got me thinking about it now. Because there was Predator in 1980s, and then Shane Black's The Predator,
Right.
which just that little distinction makes it just separate enough, but it's very clearly trying to be or it's trying to say at least that is the most Predator that the franchise has been in a long time, which I don't know about all that, but still.
Or also, despite your slander last week, The Fast and the Furious versus Fast and Furious.
Okay, here's the thing. I'm very confused by this. So, The Fast and the Furious is the name of the original 2001 film, yes?
Yes.
Okay, and so then they make the fourth film and it's just Fast and Furious?
Yes, so it's The Fast and the Furious, then it's Too Fast, Too Furious, then it's The Fast and the Furious Tokyo Drift, and then it's Fast and Furious, Fast 5, Fast and Furious 6, Furious 7, and Fate of the Furious.
Jesus Christ. That fucking
Will it alternate between whether the emphasis is on Fast or Furious at a certain point?
I mean, I still think Too Fast, Too Furious is the greatest film title in all history.
Oh,
Like,
I agree with you. I don't think anything's going to top that one.
I mean, like, there were years of something 2, Electric Boogaloo, and I'm like, nah, Too Fast, Too Furious is still the best.
Dinner there, but have you heard the title for the prequel movie that they made for Too Fast, Too Furious?
No.
It's called the Turbocharged Prelude for Too Fast, Too Furious.
Oh, that's pretty good.
Yeah, it's up there.
Anyway, I'm not sure who it is, but I'm echoing on somebody's end here.
I think it's Steve, because when I was talking to you earlier, I didn't hear myself a little bit as well.
God damn it, Steve. Yeah, I don't. I'll let you know if I hear it again. Anyway, yeah, so like the movie title rebranding is always an interesting thing. And I guess that's as close as you get, but like comics just do this so much more. I mean, there's like entire lines where really the only thing they have in common is the title, like fucking Earth 1 for DC. Like that's just, it's like, oh yeah, it's not really all on the same Earth. There's no way you can convince me of that because the conditions of those stories are inherently so different. And there's just, so really it's just the title branding. We did that whole Batman origin series here, and those were all like spin-offs of books with that title of Year One. And it's just, I don't know, it's something that DC does a lot with that kind of thing. Marvel does it so much, though, at least in the last couple of years, because I remember friggin' the biggest Cap story ever is Secret Empire, and then Nick Spencer comes in and does the worst Cap story ever. It's called Secret Empire.
Yeah, Marvel's interesting about this, because Marvel will not only rip DC off, but they'll rip themselves off. And what's really funny is like DC will do like a thing. It's not even like a branded thing. It's just a thing. And Marvel will take it to be the next big branded thing and do it into oblivion. So Jeff Johns comes down to Green Lantern. He writes Green Lantern Rebirth, revives Hal Jordan, does his run, yada yada yada. And then just conveniently a few years later, kind of cashing in on Green Lantern Rebirth being an important story, but not exactly turning it into a line, he does Flash Rebirth. And Marvel is just like, oh shit, Rebirth is the next big thing. We're going to do Daredevil Reborn, we're going to do Captain America Reborn. Every character that has ever even quasi-died is going to get a reborn story.
And then, years later, DC does Rebirth after New 52.
Exactly. I will at least give DC that it was like 10 years between Green Lantern Rebirth and Rebirth, so...
Yeah, that's true. I mean, hell, man, it might have been... Nah, it wasn't quite 10 years, because Flash Rebirth was 09, and DC Rebirth was like 2016.
Yeah, DC Rebirth 2016, Green Lantern Rebirth was like... It was right around Morrison and Batman, so it might have been 2006 or so.
I think Green Lantern Rebirth might have been 2004, or maybe
Really?
even late 2003.
Wow. God,
I
it's been
know.
such a long time. I remember when that came out in issues.
I wasn't reading comics. Yeah, I don't know. It's interesting because comics just do it so much with like lines and stuff out of these stories with these iconic names, and I mean fucking Crisis, right? Like DC and the word Crisis, and it's so funny because Morrison kind of comes in and like lays down the gauntlet, and he's like, "All right, now this is the final crisis," and then they're like, "Okay." Until Secret Crisis.
Something more crisis, baby.
They couldn't help themselves, man. They had to do it. Heroes in Crisis. Okay. Yeah, it's just there's so many like things they just can't help themselves, and it's I don't know. It sells okay. Whoever is making love to their microphone, it sells. It does at least kind of give you an idea of what the thing is going to be. I don't really know what the point of it is outside of that. I think it's mainly just a marketing thing. I was sitting here racking my brain and trying to think of things that did this besides just movie titles that vaguely use almost the same wording. And I did think of the big one, Sonic the Hedgehog. And I think that might be the problem. Is usually when you do this, it tends to fizzle out because I can't think of a time. Like I quite like DC Rebirth. Don't get me wrong, but like I don't know, Green Lantern Rebirth is probably a better story than the whole of the initial start that DC Rebirth had as far as just being a back to the good old days kind of thing. Maybe, I don't know. I'm not sure if I understand my own point, but DC Rebirth at times felt hollow compared to Green Lantern Rebirth, which felt genuine. Let's go with that.
Well, and DC Rebirth comes out on the heels of New 52, which is a much more sort of like it tried to bring a lot of people into comics, and to its credit, it did, but a lot of the stories and the kind of universe they built, they retroactively recognized as being too dark and being too cynical. Whether or not that's true or not, I don't think matters as much as that's what DC seems to think they did. And so you come in with Rebirth and you try to like bring the fun back into the universe. But I think the problem you get into with any sort of like company-wide branding issue is that every single book you're publishing does not follow the branding trend of your company all the time. And so there were New 52 books that feel like Rebirth books, and then there were Rebirth books that feel like New 52 books. And so just trying to like blanket statement your entire line as something almost inevitably backfires. Marvel Now had the same problem. All New had the same problem with Marvel. The fucking Ultimate Universe was this all over the place, where it just could not decide book to book what the brand was.
Mm-hmm. My God, I've never even desired to pick up an Ultimate book after reading just one volume of Spider-Man.
The birth of the Ultimate Universe up to Ultimatum, I think, has some genuinely really, really good comics. I think Ultimate Spider-Man is the best run on Spider-Man ever. Ultimate X-Men had some really good moments. Ultimate Fantastic Four had some great moments. Even like Ultimate Comics Captain America was legitimately really good for a little while. But I think Marvel murdered that universe really, really badly, and there is no going back.
I'm genuinely in agreement with you there, Steve. What I think is interesting about that, specifically on the Ultimate idea, and kind of the other aspect of this, there's another else I want to talk about, but I'll save it for later because we're on comics at the moment. The aspect of sometimes you get a title that's so good and it's wasted, and you're like, well, no, we need to use that title. And the example I want to bring up is specifically Al Ewing. Is he had a book called The Ultimates, which had nothing to do with the Ultimate Universe. It was just the team of effectively Marvel's Justice League, of like Black Panther, Captain Marvel, Blue Marvel, all the like top genius. Again, they're all like American Chavez for Wonder Woman. They all stand into the Justice League, and they're like the Marvel version of the Justice League called the Ultimates. And he said, "Yeah, the only reason I called it the Ultimates is because it's a fucking kick-ass name." And like, I was annoyed that we weren't using that anymore as just a team name. Like, the Ultimates is a fucking cool name, and I was like, yeah, that's ideas like that. I think are why sometimes, like, even if there's nothing in common with the previous entry in the franchise or the previous version, and I think that's going to happen again with what's happening with the Heroes Reborn figures. It's got nothing to do with the 90s Hero Reborn. It's just a good title. It's just a good recognizable name that you don't necessarily want to see get wasted.
Ghost Rider is another one that's like this, because the 90s had a secondary Ghost Rider title with Johnny Blaze and Danny Ketch called Spirits of Vengeance, which was a terrible book. But then they did a mini-series called Spirits of Vengeance that had nothing to do with anything in the previous continuity, but it was just a really good fucking title.
Yeah, no, like, those good titles hit. Like, man, I really liked the first arc of Savage Avengers. And now I'm like, quite a ways into it, I'm like, this is getting boring, which is sad when you got a fucking Conan versus a giant Norse dragon and fucking shit, but, you know, it's fine. I'll get over it. It's another Marvel book that's starting to disappoint me the longer it goes on. I'm used to it at this point.
Jesus, who hurt you? Fucking Professor X came in and fucking psychicked him in the balls.
This is all my experience with Marvel, man. I get like really into it at first, and then it just fizzles out. I don't know. Anyway, so yeah, it does seem though. I think what happens here is I want to kind of talk about this from a writing perspective. So like, usually the last thing you do is give your story a title, or it happens pretty late in the process once you decide like what the story is going to be about, like not just the plot wise but like the thematic beats. You know, you genuinely, it's not your first step. You don't just wake up with like a title in mind and then write that down and then you make a story out of that. Not saying that doesn't happen, but you probably shouldn't do that because things can quickly go awry. But like, yeah, usually a title is one of the last things you're doing for a story. There's like untitled, you know, so and so project in Hollywood movies for the longest time because the team hasn't decided on what the perfect title for this story is. Occasionally it goes the other way. Whatever happened with the Cape Crusader kind of starts as a title and then Neil Gaiman just throws his genius at it and then it works. But like, legitimately, the working of a story requires, like, the title is like a statement about the story in a number of ways usually. And so then to try to take that statement about a very particular and often very limited story and then apply it to a whole bunch of other things is that point of marketing meeting creativity and creativity kind of taking a backseat. And like, so often these do feel really phoned in, you know? Here's an ultra specific reference for those of you that are a member of the Geeks for Fun Discord. The number of people that have put "for fun" on the end of their names in the Discord because of Alfie is I think a really good example of this, because they're doing it to try to like fit in, and it's very forced and awkward. And after I mean, I was talking about this with Ash for a while. Like, Ash did it as a gag, and it took him like months for you to recognize him in any way. Then everybody else started doing it, and I think that's like a very telling thing is that kind of adopting the title to try to brand it for their things. I'm not saying it can't work, because sometimes it can. I'm just saying usually it feels very disingenuous. It feels like more of a marketing thing than an actual like story or content thing. Like, again, Sonic the Hedgehog is, I think, a really good example of that, because it's the only other Sonic game called Sonic the Hedgehog besides Sonic 1, and it's, you know, comes out to celebrate, what, his 20th anniversary at that point, or 15th or whatever? No,
20th was Generation, so
yeah,
that's 15.
Yeah, 15 for Sonic the Hedgehog. So it comes out to celebrate Sonic the Hedgehog's 15th anniversary, and it's a very, very bad game with a lot of glitches and a lot of problems, but because it says Sonic the Hedgehog, it seems more important than it actually is.
Well, I think I'm glad you brought it back to this, because I actually did want to talk about that one, and how video games use it specifically. But yeah, like how it ended up, I think it gives that impression. But like the behind the scenes story of Sonic 06 is like really sad. And the intention behind the name is, it's the thing where you're saying like sometimes you get the title for the thing is they had the name. It's like Sonic Heroes and Shadow the Hedgehog kind of went off the rails, and people kind of, the franchise wasn't doing as hot. Like there was the first time people had the rumors of, is this the Sonic Dark Age? And they were like, let's just bring it back to basics. Let's just go back to what we wanted to start with Sonic the Hedgehog. It was going to be like a soft reboot effect. I was going to start from fresh, and go from there. But during development, the Wii was going to come out, and Nintendo had a deal with Sega, and so Sega needed to get a port of Sonic 06 on the Wii. And the Wii couldn't handle because it was built for PS3 and Xbox 360. So they took half the development team, actually more than half, including the lead director of the project, and put them over to make a Wii Sonic game, which turned into Sonic and the Secret Rings.
Oh man, so we got two bad Sonic games.
Yeah, it gutted 06 and doomed it, and then the release date for it got pushed back because they wanted to release it for Christmas. So like it was like a double fucking whammy, where I legitimately do think like they came in with the best of intentions when they picked that title, and then it just kind of became ironic, and kind of a sad thing of where the project's intentions were based around the title and the meaning of that, and because at the time it was before Sonic had become kind of what he is now, where he's just a cultural signpost for like bad games or memes or internet culture. Like at that point in time, because the internet was still so fledgling and everything, Sonic really was still like, oh yeah, he's Sonic the Hedgehog, like Mario and all that. Like he wasn't the joke he is now. So I think the idea of going back to that was kind of a sense of let's bring some legitimacy back, let's get some grounds back, and let's start fresh. Very much the same way that happens when something like Doom comes out and it just calls itself Doom, or really anything that has many different versions of a franchise. With video games specifically, because gameplay is so important, and sometimes some games you go to that game franchise because you like how the original played, or the logic behind the original, the I'm trying to think of the best term for it is the philosophy behind it. This is what this game is meant to be, and with game franchises, with editions and different versions, that can get looked aside. Another example where this happened really successfully was when Mortal Kombat came out, I think in 2011, is it was just called Mortal Kombat, and it brought the franchise back to life effectively, because it was on its last death throes, and gave people what they wanted from the beginning. And I think video games have a much better track record with doing that successfully than really anything else, because it's very easy to, even if you're not doing a one-to-one copy, to understand what that initial pitch was with that title that's wrapped up in it. And when you use it again, you're kind of making a promise that we're going back to that pitch.
Well, and I think sometimes we do the opposite of that, though, but it works just as well, because you're right. I think video games have a better track record of this than anything else. But, like, thinking about the 2018 God of War game, and the way they use the title for that is we're going to keep the brand, but this is effectively God of War for a new audience. It was God of War influenced by the people that really liked The Last of Us. It's not the kind of God of War game really at all that you got in the original franchise or even the first game. It's its own monster, but it's also well regarded as maybe the best God of War game that ever came out, despite being so different.
And I think that's a good example because in the again, I'm going behind the scenes with my little video game knowledge I have from watching many documentaries on YouTube. Did you know? The God of War behind the scenes developed for that is it was going to be God of War 4, and they kept pushing it and pushing it. It was going to be set in Egypt at one point, and they were going for it, and then they realized quite early on in development that no, if this is going to be what they want it to be and to tell the stories that they do want it to be, it has to almost have the gravitas of no number, no asterisk, no subheading. It's just this is a new beginning, this is a new start, this is a new chapter in Kratos' life where you don't need to have the other God games in your repertoire, but if you do, don't worry, you're not going to be alienated. So you're right, it's almost like a middle ground with that example, because you're right, while it is something completely new and new people can come on it, it also tells God of War fans who had been, like, they had PSP games and spin-offs, and the franchise after 3 wasn't doing so hot.
Yeah, Ascension, I didn't even finish Ascension, man.
Oh god, Ascension was bad.
So, like, it's that thing of, like, this isn't... it has a lot more weight the first time you do that, because sometimes franchises will do that like 3 times, and then by the second time it's like, oh come on, you broke the first promise. But the first time a game developer does that, or a movie, or even a comic book does it, the first time they go back to a well, there is kind of a little, all right, okay, you take a little bit of note, especially if that story is infamous or beloved. The other example I use is there's been like 5 different Clone Sagas, and now there's going to be 6. And like the challenge is always, everyone always comes into it that they want to be the writer to fix it. They want to be the one, because like most people agree is that those early Clone Saga issues are legitimately good. It's a good setup. It's got some weight to it. Like the Aunt May death in 400. People cite that all the time as one of the best Spider-Man issues of all time. It's just as it kept going, it went off the rails, and then by the end of it, it had gone on so long that none of the people who originally worked on it were even still there on the project. Like it was the epitome of 90s Marvel and kind of everything wrong with comics. So a lot of writers have the, I guess, kind of like the gumption to earn that badge. To be like, I'll fulfill the potential, I'll do the prophecy. No one has really. Chip Zdarsky kind of comes the closest in Life Story, and even then, it's not. That whole book's not about the Clone Saga. It's the Clone Saga just happens in it. So
Can I just interrupt for a stupid fucking point?
Go ahead.
So it's really funny to me that Spider-Man is the only like Western comics character whose like arcs are talked about in the same terminology that fucking manga and anime
sagas.
is. Yeah, the sagas. So really what we need to solve the Spider-Man Clone Saga problem is we need a fucking tournament arc.
Spider Clone Tournament, let's do it.
It's so good though.
I think I know how to fix the Clone Saga, guys.
I think, man, fucking go. This is a fucking pitch I am in for.
It's got to have the training arc build up, and then it's got to have the tournament, and it's going to be great.
Yeah, I know.
It's pretty good.
It's so fucking good. Fucking Venom will be there. You can use all your spider sonas in there. It'll be great. Nah, my passion project is still the Spiders Man one shot. Marvel, I know I shit talk your books all the time. It's because they're mostly bad, but like, hear me out. Just give me one issue for a Spiders-Man comic, and I will knock it out of the park. It'll be the best comic that's literally ever come across anybody's desk. Like, all the Marvel fans will read it. All the Marvel readers will be like, oh, so this is what good comics are. And then...
Look, if you commit to doing your company-wide, the I guess it would be like the Cell Saga is the Clone Saga. Saga is the closest one to it. It's like the tournament arc of that. You can have Spiders-Man be a participant because you always need like the wild card. You always need like the goofy, like the unconventional.
No, you
weird,
don't understand. If I
like,
ever write for Marvel, Spiders-Man is going to be like my trademark. Like if you like,
it's gonna be your solo shark.
Yeah, I'll always put Spiders-Man in a fucking Marvel story. Like, I'll find a way. It'll be like the most like gritty, like grounded Punisher Daredevil crossover story, and fucking Spiders-Man will just show up for like an issue, and you won't even necessarily know it's Spiders-Man. Maybe it's just Spider-Man shows up and he's acting kind of weird. But then you realize it's me. You're like, someone's like, "Hey, Ian, you forgot to put Spiders-Man in this comic. I guess you broke your record." I'm like, now you see that panel of Spider-Man in the background there? That's him. I'm like so jealous because I think that is the greatest character anyone has ever made. Like, every so often Marvel occasionally knows what they're doing. Like, you see the glimmers of actual genius come through, and then they go right for DC, and then you see the actual genius.
Anyway,
I'm just being salty tonight.
Over here, pushing his fucking agenda. Apparently, Dragon Ball DC has been fucking contacted by email by fucking Jim Lee, and he's like, "Hey, if you don't want us to sue the pants off you, you gotta fucking put some good word out there." And fucking he jumped on that case immediately because he's like, "I've got a wife and kid, man. I don't want fucking Jeff Johns sniping me out of my fucking house." So, like, I understand it, but you're a coward and a fraud. But in terms of like going back to like titles in the comics and like Marvel specific, because Marvel's doing that a lot. I think the reason why Marvel tends to do that, and we talk about this separately, but I'm curious the way you guys land on it, is because Marvel is so continuity heavy that their version of Dark Knight Returns, Infinite Crisis, all of that is arcs in the books. Like the coming of Galactus and the If This Be My Destiny and all of that. They're like those Born Again even. Like, these aren't things that happened in one shots. These are things that happened in mainline and are part of the ongoing thing. So I think the reason they keep going back to that well is that's literally all they fucking got is the names of these. Like again, we had another Secret Wars. And what do you guys think? There's anything to that? Do you think that is a benefit, or do you think that's a detriment?
I mean, I think the biggest problem they face with that is so many of the titles they want to reuse, with a few notable exceptions like Clone Saga, are just really good fucking stories, and they're stories that are designed to basically end the chapter on whatever character they're focusing on. Like, if Daredevil was no longer published after Born Again, I'd be sad, obviously, because we had some great fucking Daredevil runs after that book, but Born Again's the perfect Daredevil story. There is not a single Daredevil story that is better than Born Again. It's exactly what you need. And then every Daredevil run is kind of just a version of Born Again, either at the very end of it, or at the very beginning of it, or elongating certain moments of it. You can pinpoint any Daredevil writer's main influence by just citing an issue of Born Again, which makes for some really, really good stuff, but it does sort of create this feedback loop where, in order to go to that well, the character has to get to a certain place where they are effectively back where they started every time. And the epitome of this is always going to be Spider-Man, because Spider-Man's the kind of character that has a very gradual progression where he grows up, where he dates, where he gets married, where he like effectively goes from awkward teenager in high school to mature, confident adult. And in order to do that story, in order to create that premise, in order to recreate that essential Stan Lee run, you have to keep ending his big confident turnaround moment with a reason to turn him back into a kid. And that's just every Spider-Man run. Every Spider-Man run is you kind of give him the awkwardness up to the adult, and then make him an awkward teenager again, even if he's not an awkward teenager in age. And when you get to stuff like the Ultimate Universe, because it's an alternate reality, they can sort of steal from those big, heavy stories and do them over again. But they really quickly realize that this doesn't work for their characters and their publishing model, because their main line depends on it so much. So like you'd get Ultimate Comics storylines and 616 storylines that just kind of converged and were doing the same thing at the exact same time, to the point where it was effectively meaningless, where we were doing Iron Man Armor Wars in the Ultimate Universe at the same time as we were doing a version of Armor Wars again in the main Iron Man book, and so it just became redundant and there was nowhere else to go.
Iron Man's a good one as well, though, Steve, because I think in that sense of like the branding of the title, rather than like marketing, is the title is a promise of, in comics specifically, of a status quo that you remember, of this thing being the way you imagine this character in this thing. With Iron Man, we do that a lot with Demon in the Bottle and the alcoholism thing.
So, I don't know if that's necessarily the one I would go for, but I see what you're saying. Because Demon in a Bottle happens in the Michelini-Layton run. It is only one issue, and then it doesn't come back until the Dennis O'Neil run, and then we don't effectively touch the alcoholism thing at all until the early 2000s with Carol Danvers and Tony in the Kurt Busiek run. So there's effectively like a 30-year period of time where Tony does not have an alcoholism story at all. And then after the Busiek run, it sort of goes off the map again until Matt Fraction does his famous AA issue. So like, Demon in a Bottle is a weird one because it's almost like Hugo Strange with Batman. We're like, we do it, and then we let it die for an extended period of time before it comes back. I think it's only recently that it's kind of come back more to the forefront, probably because the Downey Iron Man was... Everyone was always hoping that Downey Iron Man would do Demon in a Bottle, and he never did. And so the comics kept trying to do Downey Iron Man with Demon in a Bottle, so he just kept coming back. But Armor Wars is the big one, I think, that they do with Iron Man all the time, where ever since Michelini-Layton did Stark Wars originally, everyone wanted to do that. So you had Stark Wars, and then you had Armor Wars, which later got recalled Armor Wars 2, and then every single Iron Man run started creating this same essential premise, which is Tony needs to use all of his suits to take out some mechanical monstrosity with technology that was stolen from him. And every Iron Man run just ends exactly the same way to do this, and with the one exception of Warren Ellis, because he only did 5 issues.
Okay, that kind of answers the general vibe. What about Mr. Sid Part 2? I know you're not as much a Marvel guy, but is that something that you think is a reason that maybe puts you off? Because we've spoken before about how like them
Marvel
having so
continuity is
steeped
just
in continuity.
It's like there's Marvel continuity, which is just fucking impenetrable to a point, and then there's X-Men continuity, which is like a labyrinth within a maze within a puzzle box. And X-Men,
the X-Men.
Yeah, no, the X-Men has so much of this too, right? Like there's just so many reused ideas, and to the point where Professor X is just like every comic character. I think, so many writers, so much time, so many stories. You're gonna find like shitty things that comic characters have done, but like, if you just were to tabulate all the shitty things that Professor X has done, he is just like the worst person. Like, he is objectively the villain, and nothing Magneto has done can compare, right? So I don't know. That's always been a factor to why I've never gotten into Marvel the same way I did with DC, because DC has always felt very much more approachable, which is funny because I know that like Manos isn't as big a DC guy as he is a Marvel guy, and it's because he's annoyed with DC's constant reboots. But like, goddamn, I don't need to know. Like, here's the crazy thing: DC fan, huge DC fan. DC is my go-to. I've still never fucking read Infinite Crisis. Or no, wait, my bad. Crisis on Infinite Earths. Never read it. do not give one single fuck about that story. Oh, Supergirl dies. Huh. I don't give a fuck. I've never read it. I've read stuff before it. I've read tons of shit after it. Never bothered. Why should I? It doesn't matter. It's fine. Like, the reboot events and all that stuff, yeah, it gets kind of exhausting, but, like, you can skip them. I promise it doesn't matter. So I think
that's the frustration, though, that a lot of people have, and that's part of my frustration with it, is that they keep doing these branded titled events that are crises that are billed for this entire company-wide crossover. Everything has to tie into it. It reshapes everyone's books, and they never matter.
No,
so
I mean, I understand like how that's
so
annoying.
much if it wasn't like Final Crisis comes out and every single writer in the entire company has to stop what they're doing to address Final Crisis, and then Final Crisis just doesn't fucking matter after it's over.
No, I mean, I agree. That is annoying. I think, in my experience, that's happened more to me with Marvel books than it does with DC stuff. I don't know. But it's just, I think that impenetrable wall of continuity, because Marvel has, I think, kind of stubbornly decided they're not going to reboot. Like, they keep getting closer and closer to it, but all the time it's still like they're all soft reboots. They've never done a hard reset like DC did after Crisis on Infinite Earths. So I think that's part of it, and so they keep having to go back to the well of the big stories, because I mean, you'll see them occasionally do things with stuff that's more of like a standalone. We did that whole video on like the old soldiering discussion, and you know they've gotten a lot of mileage out of old man so and so, you know.
So DC.
Yeah, no, I mean, sure, like DC did it as mostly a gag, if I'm not mistaken, with Old Lady Harley, but yeah, you got Dark Knight Returns in there, and then they tried to do the same thing with like Kingdom Come Superman and yada yada. So no, it's interesting to see stuff like that. I just find it like amusing that Marvel is so beholden to the continuity that they have to retell the things, because usually what it is like there'll be a successful DC story and it's kind of in that vague DC continuity of like everything, you're familiar enough with it, and then DC is like, oh man, this is really successful, okay, we're wrapping this into our canon, even if it doesn't quite work, we're doing it anyway, because you saw that with like Killing Joke and whatnot. And so it's just kind of funny how that works out, because then DC will wrap it into their things, because they did that with, like I said, Year One, and then we get like all these, you know, Batman villain origins that have Year One in the title, and then we get like Green Arrow Year One, and then, you know, Frank Miller waits to go crazy and then kind of recovers slightly from the crazy, but then psych, the crazy was still there all the time with Superman Year One, which doesn't take place over a year.
Yep. They had to waste that fucking title. Don't remind me. Literally, Batman Year One, fucking masterpiece. Wonder Woman Year One. Here comes the money. Superman Year One.
The one thing I will give it is John Romita Jr. drawing the old school Superman costume. I fucking love it.
Yeah, that's pretty cool. And then you get like Lana Lang almost getting raped, and fucking Superman fighting for Lori Lamel's hand against her father. Like,
look, that's for sure.
What the fuck, Frank Miller? Why all the time? Every time. Fucking Frank Miller and Alan Moore just can't help themselves to put in their rape scenes. They really, like, fucking everyone's on Armie Hammer's ass for saying some questionable ass shit about like sexual violence. I'm sitting here like eyeballing Alan Moore super hard.
So we've talked about the same title thing with some movies and video games. I want to really quickly just do my spiel about the Halloween movies that have done this.
Go for it.
Because for people that don't know, you need to go watch our episode on the Halloween franchise because I kind of go over all of this, and I'm not going to do all of it again just because it's not Halloween, so I'm not in the mood. But Halloween's a franchise that has 3 movies called Halloween, and they're all presumably connected in some way, shape, or form because there is the original Halloween, the 1978 movie, and then there's the 2007, I think, remake that's just called Halloween. And then there's the 2018 movie called Halloween, which is a sequel to the 1978 Halloween. So there's Halloween, and then Halloween, also known as Halloween 2, not to be confused with Halloween 2 and Halloween 2. So, because there's just 3 Halloween 2s, it's fucking insane. Also not to be confused with Halloween H2O, which is also kind of a Halloween 2. But there's Halloween, Halloween, and Halloween. And every time they do this with the same mentality of the original Halloween is widely regarded as one of the greatest horror movies of all time. It birthed the slasher genre. It's a classic. It's a John Carpenter staple. Yada 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 yada. It's just one of those movies where like everything about it is iconic in some way, shape, or form. And so you keep making sequels because you want to keep cashing in on that name, but because of slasher movies as a craze, that dies down really quickly, and Halloween dies out way before Friday the 13th and Nightmare on Elm Street. Halloween gets stale by like movie 2 compared to everything else in the slasher genres, which progressively find their identity. It's like the middle Freddy and Jason movies that are always the best one. It's only the only good Halloween movies are like the early ones. So you get to the remake that Rob Zombie does, and the idea is, okay, we're done with the slasher bullshit, we're done with all of the sequels, and we're going to go back to like the core essence that is just Halloween. And we're going to make for today, with this title, what Halloween was for the 70s. And then they don't do it at all, and it's terrible, and it's a weird fucking acid trip. And then 10 years later, they do Halloween again, which is Halloween 2018, and it's the exact same logic, which is Halloween is a staple of the horror genre. We're going to do Halloween again, except we're going to quote-unquote respect the original and make a sequel to it, but also just call it Halloween and try to do for it today what Halloween was for the 70s. Except they don't do that at all. And they just basically remake Halloween H2O, except worse. So Halloween's a weird franchise because you've got the perfect title, right? Like, you're gonna have a horror movie franchise, what fucking better title is there than just fucking Halloween? And every time they do this, they just waste it, and it makes me really sad, because Halloween should be, like, the staple horror movie genre, and it's not.
Okay, here's what you do, alright? Hear me out on this, Steve. You keep making films in the Halloween franchise, alright? That's step number 1. Step number 2, you keep calling them Halloween, and you release one every year until you make a good one.
if we're gonna try that, I think we might get it by year 31.
Yeah, no, I think this is a solid plan. You just keep making Halloween movies until you accidentally make a good one. It's a monkey typewriter situation here, all right? And then the fans will know the good ones because they'll just start calling it Halloween 2021, Halloween 2022, Halloween 2023. And, you know, again, we'll do it like the Saw films, where we'll just make one a year. Oh.
Not even gonna lie, that's almost a good plan. Of just make it and name it after the year, and eventually something will stick.
I'm just down with the pitches tonight. Like, Alfie's down with the sickness, I'm down with the pitches.
What?
And Steve's down with the bitches. Let's go!
Let's do this! But yeah, that's just my whole thing with Halloween, because Halloween has got, like, the easiest fucking branding of all time, and they just waste it.
I actually hate that they have it because, goddamn, it is such a good title, and goddamn, those movies suck so hard.
There is exactly 1.5 good Halloween movies. And it's kind of sad. And it's a shame because I watch every Halloween movie every year all the time. I fucking love the Halloween movies, but they are not good.
Ugh. I'll never understand. Like, I don't understand how you are constantly rewatching things. That's the thing that cracks me up. It's like, oh yeah, every summer I rewatch Avatar, and every year I rewatch all of Buffy and Angel, and every Christmas I watch nothing but Hallmark movies, and then every Halloween I watch all the Halloween movies.
It's because I don't own a home, I do not have a wife, and I don't have a child.
What are you watching now? What are you rewatching now?
I actually started rewatching the DC Animated Universe movies, which are almost all terrible. Not gonna lie,
Oh,
Wonder Woman
the
Bloodlines.
direct-to-DVD ones. Okay.
Yeah, the direct-to-DVD ones. Wonder Woman Bloodlines, by the way, that is a 90-minute movie that would have made a fucking amazing TV show.
Mm-hmm.
There is too much happening in that movie.
No, it is seriously just them trying to do Rucka's run twice. Like Rucka's had 2 runs on Wonder Woman, and they're like, yeah, we can put this into one movie.
Literally every 12 minutes, it's just a season of television.
I know, yeah. Did you watch that digitally, or did you go out and get like the DVD Blu-ray?
I don't know, I watched it on HBO Max.
I don't know if they have the Death short that they released for the Blu-ray on HBO Max, but you should definitely watch that. That's really, really good. That's like
Is that collected in any of those like compilation ones? Because I know the Death in the Family HBO release has a bunch of shorts at the end of it, so it might be in that.
It might be. I don't know. It's definitely worth watching. It's probably the best piece of DC animation in like 30 years.
Dang. Okay, I'm going to have to check that out after this.
Yeah, it's really, really good. Anyway, so yeah, I don't know. The idea of like grabbing a title and reusing it for another thing, just it always seems like I'm really struggling to think of a time that it really, really works, like where it's just undeniably yes. Most of the time it kind of slides by and you don't really think about it, or it's actively detrimental to the thing because it's now, hey, look at me, I'm like this good thing that you like, and then it's like, yeah, but you're
So
not.
here's one maybe. I don't know if it necessarily counts, but I feel like it counts. But Rocky 6, Rocky Balboa,
Okay.
I think that's one where that's like a sequel made several years down the line. The title is Rocky Balboa. It's not a number. It's literally just the name of the character, in the same way that we were talking about before, where it's trying to recapture something about that character's essence. And the title and the theme and the whole sort of narrative of that movie just lines up so perfectly, where it's like you watch that movie and you get precisely why people love Rocky movies, why they like Rocky as a character, and it's just a good fucking movie.
I thought Rocky Balboa was like one of the despised films in the franchise.
No.
People love Rocky Balboa.
Rocky Balboa is like one of the best movies Stallone's ever made.
When was that one released?
I don't remember.
Is that the-
Mid to
2006.
late 2000s. Yeah,
2006.
Okay, I thought that was one of the ones that was hated for some reason. Huh. Maybe I'm crazy.
There was a lot of shit that came out. Maybe it's a good thing as well. There was a lot of shit that came out when it was announced, because they were like, "Oh my god, the fucking." This is another thing that can kind of happen when you bring back something with the title. It's like it's kind of happened with the Clone Saga thing recently. It's like, you've beaten the old horse. It's dead. Let it die. Who asked for this? Why do we need another one of these things? There was a lot of that when it came out, especially because, again, how can you have a boxing movie when Sylvester Stallone's that age? But then it came out, and then it, from what I remember, it is definitely, it's up there with the first one and Creed and Rocky 2 as like the ones that people universally agree is like, these are fucking good films.
Which one had the robot?
Rocky 4.
Okay. I like the robot. I don't like the film, but I like the robot quite a bit. It's a cool robot.
It's good.
Thank you for coming to my TED Talk.
But yeah, no, Rocky Balboa I think is one of those where I think it got on the ground floor of doing this, where you title it in a way that's very much just about the branding and not necessarily keeping with sequence. And that's the Rocky movie I think more than any I would feel more comfortable showing to people, because like Rocky's a really great movie. Rocky 2 is a really great movie. Rocky, though, is really fucking boring, if I'm going to be completely honest. And if someone who is not accustomed to watching 70s movies wants to watch a movie with me, I'm not going to make them sit through fucking Rocky, but I will absolutely turn on Rocky Balboa.
70s is weird, because 70s has some of the best films ever, but, like, they're still all paced like 70s films.
They're all, like, 3 hours long, yeah.
I know, it's just, like, such a fucking commitment, man.
It literally is just kind of your day, because, like, the plot for Rocky does not start until, like, an hour into that fucking movie.
I swear to God, like, you know, fucking film pacing has gotten so much better. Like it's a weird thing to say, because obviously I'm more accustomed to current pacing of films, but, like, just Jesus Christ, leave some shit on the fucking cutting room floor, guys.
It's a normal distribution. It was the 30s, 40s, and 50s were fucking itch perfect for your movie lengths. And then it got way too long in the 60s, 70s, and 80s. And then by the 90s into the 2000s, it got cut down again. But now we're on the spike up again. We're in the late 2000s. Everything's fucking 2.5 hours again.
Yeah. And then we're getting the 4-hour director's cut of Justice League.
Yeah, I mean, regardless of what anyone says about the quality of Wonder Woman 1984, that is a 2.5 hour movie. It does not need to be 2.5 hours long.
Yeah, no, it really does meander for quite a bit. And also, you know, meanders to get in racial stereotypes.
It's not a good movie, I'm sorry. It's just so bad. Anyway.
I don't think it's so bad. I think it's pretty freaking average. It's just Gal Gadot being Gal Gadot has kind of drawn attention to what is pretty standard racism in Hollywood. So I thought that was kind of interesting.
But yeah, Rocky Balboa would be my example of where I feel like the branding really, really worked for it, because it was cashing in on that nostalgia. It was about nostalgia. I really like a lot of the sort of like legacy sequels we've been doing lately. I don't like the idea of them, but I think we've made really good ones, like Blade Runner. But I don't think anything like does the title trick the same way this one does.
I don't know, there's something to, you know, the power of reason title. I'm trying to think if, like, novels do this. I mean, you have to be a pretty prolific novelist to get away with a trick like that, because most novelists have, like, a catalog of, like, 10 books, right? You need, like, that Stephen King level where he puts out, like, 5 a year to be able to do something where the title matters. Like, could you imagine if Stephen King released Cujo again or something, like fucking another Cujo thing, or The Shining, I guess? That'd be pretty crazy.
Novels are weird, because novels will put out sequels several decades later, and they will be titled in the most, like, nondescript way ever. Like, the sequel to The Shining is Doctor Sleep, and there is nothing about that tells you anything about the fact that it's a sequel to The Shining. The sequel, quote-unquote, prequel, first draft, whatever, of To Kill a Mockingbird is Go Set a Watchman. Like, where's the PR team for these?
Well, I mean, it's because novels constantly are the last things to get a title. Like, it's usually they'll just rip, like, one random sentence from a book. I mean, I'm pretty sure most novelists pick their book title by just flipping through the pages and, like, going, "Mew." I mean, like, fucking, like, Catcher in the Rye, you know? Like, goddamn, that's a long-ass title. Go Set a Watchman. Like, these are all sentences, not titles. You know, you can't talk about fucking, like, you know what, we do Star Wars, and we're talking about Star Wars, we're like, oh yeah, Return Jedi, or Empire, or New Hope. You know, like, it's like almost a syllable, right? And then fucking titles. Like, could you imagine trying to fan talk about fucking some novels where it's like, ah, yes, in the age of innocence. Like, fucking no, you can't do that. They're all too grandiose.
Even the shorter titles do kind of feel like a mouthful, like Great Expectations.
The Great Gatsby.
Words, but Jesus Christ.
The Great Gatsby. The Color Purple. Like, it's so much. Oh.
Frankenstein or the Modern Prometheus.
I know, exactly. She couldn't even make up her fucking mind.
She gave you two.
That's fucking... That is Mary Shelley to a T. Where it's like, okay, perfect description. Moving... No. We're not moving on. We're going to stay on this page. and talk about this mountain range for the next 5 chapters, and then we will move on.
I feel really lucky that my coming of age to reading novels started with reading a lot of old ones, so like they don't bother me when they do shit like that. But I try to go back to them now as an adult who is apparently a lot dumber than he was when he was 16, and I just can't fucking do it.
No. See, what it is you didn't understand that writing could be good when you were 16, and you were told that this is good, so you were of the mental mindset to go, okay, well, I need to read it so that I know what good things are. And then you learned what actual taste was, and then you realize, oh no, everyone just likes this because it's important. And they need to be snobs. Like the invention of the printing press is an interesting thing, because suddenly it makes books go from being this status symbol to, available to the masses. So they can still be a status symbol, because now it's about what you've actually read.
You see, what happens is there used to be books only for rich people. Then the masses got them. So now there are books, except they have really, really big words.
Mm-hmm. Yep, pretty much. Anyway, Alfie, have we beaten this title topic into the ground sufficiently?
There's only one thing I do want to talk about. Now, I'm going to be curious for Steve to weigh in on it, as kind of he's part of it, but not as deep in the muck as me and you are. We are guilty of this ourselves. We have reused titles for the DBDC series, most specifically the Saiyan saga, and even then just like thematic parallels and stuff. And because of that, we've had a lot of our audience wanting it to be that exactly to a T, or expecting it to be that to a T, to where at this point I've had to make public posts telling them to not do that, and then on said public posts they'll reply asking for that. So, how do you feel about our relationship with that, with our little franchise?
I mean, it's just adorable. And, like, honestly, I don't think I could ask for a better gift as a writer who likes to do, mysteries and play with it. I like to fuck people's minds. I like to take my dick and I like to stick it right in their minds and just raw dog fuck them. Just really get in there. Nothing. Pussy doesn't feel half as good as someone's poor innocent brain. So, yeah, I mean, I can't really ask for a better gift. And I mentioned this on live stream, and God, if anyone actually watches Geeky Gentleman from the Geeks for Fun crew, here's a big old hint for you. The fact that they've created such expectations of what it is going to be, that I have such a roadmap of how to fuck with someone's mind, is just like it's gotta be like that and then heroin, of how good that feels as a writer. You feel bad about it, Alfie. I'm sitting here like, oh yeah, no. Cell's gonna show up. It's gonna be great. I don't know. Shit like that is interesting. For us in particular, I don't want to get it too into it. I feel a lot of that expectation comes because of what the what if community of YouTube Dragon Ball does, because I don't even think this is like inherent to like fanfiction.net or anything. Like I think most people on fanfiction.net would be the types to complain like, it was just too similar to the original story. Like they'd get on our case for not going more different.
There was no fucking.
Yeah, why no sex? What's going on with this? I find it so funny that like everyone will ship Goku with literally any female character he has any interaction with for more than 0.5 seconds, except for Shiva. I find that so funny.
I was a little disturbed when I was watching the live comments of Doom Saga Part 3, and people are like, so Batgirl Goku?
Yeah.
I'm like,
the
he's
thumbnail
12.
alone had people doing it, and I'm like, what the fuck?
It's just the way they're
I-
programmed, man.
It's so fucking bad.
I mean, I'll bring up Lance's critique of main Dragon Ball, and I think this will give you an idea of why that is. It's because the two most notable female characters in main Dragon Ball aren't really there, or don't really get into relationships to service their own interests or their own characters. They get in relationships to create new characters of importance. Gohan and Trunks. Like, to the point where Toriyama didn't even bother, implying any kind of romance between Vegeta and Bulma. He just wanted Trunks to show up. And that's kind of an interesting critique, and I think I quite like it because I think it's given the fandom and the anime and stuff a lot of mileage to do some really interesting stories. So I've quite enjoyed it, but at the same time, it is a I think it's a reason why you see that mentality in the Dragon Ball fandom. Not that it has much to do with the point of what you're asking. The expectations that a title sets up, I think, can be really interesting, and I think are kind of fun to play with from a writer's perspective. I don't know, Steve, what do you think? You've watched the Dragon Ball DC Saiyan saga. I'm sure it's been a little while, but, it's still pretty different from the main Saiyan saga, yeah?
I mean, as far as I remember, it seems like it's got a similar structure, but it's its own thing, and I didn't even, think to compare them, honestly.
Well, I know some people have commented, it's it's just too similar. I'm like, Raditz, Nappa, and Vegeta show up at the same time. The Justice League actually beats the two Saiyan, beats Raditz and Nappa on their own without any help from Goku. And then the Goku-Vegeta fight's pretty similar, but the whole Wrath state is actually probably more of a fitting commentary than on the themes of that saga than the Kaioken was.
Well, I guess my thing is just it's its own universe and it's its own saga, and so it doesn't have to be like the Saiyan saga in DBZ at all. But at the same time, what the fuck else would you call it besides the Saiyan saga?
That's a good question.
Right?
What else
If
could
you
we
had to
have
go
called
back and do this over because for some reason, let's say you were getting paid real money for this, and they're like, you can do whatever you want with your DC and Toei Funimation properties, you just can't call it the Saiyan Saga because it makes the brands confusing. What else would you call it?
The Apes of Apocalypse. Boom!
There you go. The Apocalypse Invasion of the saga.
The Apes of Apocalypse is the fun.
But then at the same time, because you're on YouTube and algorithms, you kind of have to call it the Saiyan Saga because that's the thing that would generate that audience. So I don't know. It's a weird thing where it's everyone who is watching this video should implicitly understand that this is a different thing, which is why they're watching it, that they know what they're looking for, which is how they found it, and yet somehow they just can't put those two things together while they're watching it and want it to be identical? Because if that's the case, why aren't you just watching the Saiyan Saga on YouTube?
I mean, that's my thing, is the number of people that expect it and want it to be the same thing that they've already got. That's the thing that gets me with the comments all the time. Will you put Cell in? Will you put Frieza in? Will you put Beerus in? Because you already have Dragon Ball. The fun is to see Goku in the DC universe. Stop it.
It's really kind of weird because it just sort of speaks to me of this larger problem, which is people don't like things to be different, and even when they seek out things that are actively different, the only way they can come to appreciate it is by measuring it against the things that are not different, and it just seems like that's a poor way to enjoy things that are actively not trying to do that. For example, Blade Runner 2049 comes out, we get the trailer, and like immediately the first and only thing people are doing is like trying to compare and pull shots that look identical to the original Blade Runner. And I'm like, okay, I get that this is kind of like clever and fun, but you understand how like that mentality can be taken too far, and that it's been 30 fucking years and this is a different thing, and like if you use this one thing as your point of reference to experience everything else that it inspired, then you're probably just not enjoying anything else.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, that's my whole thing. And maybe that's my whole thing with this whole title thing too, which is just, I think if you're going to reuse the title, then you're actively creating a point of reference, so you know what you're doing. But very much too often we get to this point where what the original was and what we're trying to do now are not allowed to be separate enough entities. I like what Alfie said at the very beginning, which is just, we reuse the title because it's a really good fucking title, and that's it. Clone Saga is a really good title.
One thing I do want to ask then, and maybe this is a good way to close up, Ian, if you are okay with me taking that from you.
No, that's fine.
Do you guys have any recommendations for something that uses the title of something else that you like better than the original?
Oh, God.
Because I'll go first to fucking buy you guys some time. I adore the Ultimate Clone Saga. The Ultimate Clone Saga fucking slaps. Like that is a really good comic. And it does everything you would want it to do with a fucked up premise of having clones, and like what the Clone Saga in the 90s was going for being like the most shocking event, with every issue being a twist and a turn. Literally every issue of the Ultimate Clone Saga ends on the biggest cliffhanger you could ever imagine, and the next issue is an even bigger cliffhanger you could ever imagine. It's like, and it's just back to back to back to back to back, and it doesn't overstay its welcome. It's short and sweet, and it's a fucking roller coaster. And I think it's legitimately, if you want to justify the premise of using clones in Spider-Man, and that's why I'm kind of still on board for I forget the writer's first name, but Ahmed's current Miles Morales run. The reason he's been doing a really good job at the moment with Miles, and he's like, okay, no, I really want to do this with the clones, because I've seen that this shit can just be nuts. I'm like, yeah, know what? Go for it. Show me how Miles Morales would react to people fucking with his DNA like that, and just how crazy that would be to endure. So yeah, my answer for that would be the Ultimate Clone Saga is absolutely phenomenal.
Steve, you got anything?
So I mean, Rocky Balboa was my original example. I think Rocky Balboa is just a more enjoyable movie than the original Rocky, and I would much more actively show that to people as opposed to the original Rocky. I guess the other thing, and maybe this is just because it's fresher in my head because I reread it recently, but Secret Wars. I really like the Secret Wars comic that it did in 2015, something like
Hickman's.
that. Yeah, Hickman's Secret Wars I thought was legitimately really good. The original Secret Wars is a classic. I enjoy it, but you try and go back and read it, and it doesn't make any fucking sense. And the newer Secret Wars, I don't know. I could have lived in that status quo for like a year and really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I got nothing, guys. I don't know. I got nothing. I'm sitting here trying to rack my brain.
The Dragon Ball DC Saiyan Saga.
Yeah, the Dragon Ball DC Saiyan Saga. So good. Shits on the original. Toriyama, what the fuck were you thinking?
What were they thinking?
I guess, okay, here we go. She-Ra. Bam. Done. Alright, there we go.
Good one. One more that we mentioned earlier, but God of War 4, I like a lot more than I like the original God of War game.
There you go.
Cool. Yeah. Alright, well, what are we talking about next time? Is it my turn? Is it Steve's? Whose review turn?
I think it's my turn. Let me check the channel real quick and see what order we have gone in.
Well, I don't think it fucking matters anymore. I just need to start like rolling like a D3 or D4 or something.
I mean, we can always roll a D4. Google has those. So, okay, so...
Steve, I need to buy you a set of dice. What are 2 colors you enjoy?
I like green and I like blue.
Green, blue. Okay.
Cool. Yeah, I mean, do you want to do rock, paper, scissors? I guess it doesn't really matter.
Alright, me and you, rock, paper, scissors for review topic. Ready?
Let's do this.
Alright, rock, paper, scissors, go. Paper.
Scissors. We did it.
Ding, ding,
get a
ding,
review
ding, ding,
topic.
and the champion, Steve Baxi. Any words to the crowd? What are we doing?
Review, right?
Yep.
Okay. Let us review. Shit, what is a thing that I want to make you guys watch that you may have not watched before? Or read, or listened to. I don't fucking know. There were so many ideas and there were so many things. Let's review. You know, I mentioned it earlier. I'm kind of curious to see what you guys would think about it. Let's review the. I actually want to do that. Yeah, let's do that. Let's review Doctor Sleep, the sequel movie to The Shining.
Alright, sounds good. Is that another like 2.5 hour fucking...
It's like a 2 hours and 45 minutes long, yeah.
Oh my god, that's forever.
I know. I already watched it though, so ha.
Ha. I
Son
already
of a
wasted my time.
bitch.
You son of a bitch, you fucking crafty bastard.
Steve only said that because right now he is Dr. Sleepy.
I am usually in bed like an hour ago.
Jesus, Steve. Alright, everyone, thanks so much for watching. Until next time, I'm the Philosopher.
I am the champion of the oppressed.
And I am the ultimate conductor, Tyranno.